Hello, everybody. It is Dr. Yolanda, and we are back. I have been away, and I'll share with you all a little bit about what I've been doing. But this is National Immunization Awareness Month. And so we wanted to start this month, kick it off, and talk about ways that we can boost our immunity. Obviously, we'll talk some about the immunizations themselves, but there are some natural ways to boost your immunity. So before we get into the topic today, again, for those of you who don't know me, I will introduce myself. And for those who do know me, it's just saying hello again. But I am Dr. Yolanda Lewis Ragland. I am a double board certified physician. I am board certified in both pediatrics and bariatrics. And what is bariatrics? Bariatrics is the medical management of weight loss. Now, my show is mind, body, and stress with Dr. Yolanda. And the reason this is such an important topic for me is because there are a lot of connections. There's this axis, right? Really, that sort of interplays between what's going on with us and with our mental health, how our to those stresses. These are called your psychosomatic symptoms that you may have. And again, that stress that plays back on that loop, right? So it's our stress, it's our mental health, it's our physical health. And so there are things that stress us out on a daily basis. And guess what? We're going to talk about it because some of those stressors, many of those stressors decrease our immune system or break down our immune system, and they make us more susceptible to getting ill for various things, viruses, bacterial infections, all kinds of things. So before we go on, I want to know, where are you joining in from? Okay, so I'm here in Washington, D.C. Many of you who know, I'm both in Washington, D.C., and I spend a lot of my time in New York City. Shout out to Harlem, New York. But I am in both Washington, D.C. and New York. But I'm always interested in knowing, who do we have on board? How are you guys? Where are you calling? Where are you joining in from? So I want you to rep your city. Let me know where you are. I see you watching from South Florida. All my prayers to everybody in Florida for various reasons. But I see you in here from South Florida. If you are in here and you're repping your city, go ahead and tell us where you shout out your city, so I can try to recognize you, and we're going to move on from there. But this is such an amazing topic because our immune systems. Hey, South Carolina, I see you, Michael Smith. What's happening to us and often we don't recognize is that there are many stresses and many things that we are that's impacting us on a daily basis. And it affects not just our mental health, it affects our physical health. And guess what? There are things that most people don't realize are affecting it. Our stress affects our oral health. Yes, our oral health. Stress affects our heart health. Stress affects our liver. And your liver is very important because your liver is the thing that detoxifies, right? All the toxins in your system. And we're constantly being bombarded by toxins, whether they're environmental toxins, whether they're some of the foods that we're eating. We're going to talk about that. There's some foods that we're eating because they're processed that have lots of toxins in them. I mean, food dyes, preservatives, excess sugar. We all know sugar is inflammatory. So there's lots of things that's happening with food that often we're consuming. And that means we're actually putting ourselves in harm's way, right? So we have to be aware of this so that we're not exposing ourselves inadvertently, right, to these toxins. So as I speak, I'm actually sharing with someone here who's asking questions right here while we're talking, because I want people to know what we're doing, where we're coming from, and how to boost their immune systems, right? So I have lots of people that are chiming in, and I'm telling them, go ahead and get on so that they can be a part of this. So when we talk about this is again National Immunization Awareness Month, and a lot of times when we think about immunizations, I'm a pediatrician, so this is my bread and butter. I talk about this and do this stuff all day long, and we have something called information sheets that we share, the manufacturer's information sheets, but we also share like information on when your child should be vaccinated, against what your child should be vaccinated, what things are mandatory, what things are optional, what things that we highly recommend, right? Well, oftentimes, again, we think about immunization month, and the first thing we think is the immunizations that affect our children, which I'll talk a little bit about. But what are those immunizations that adults should be getting? And we're lots of stories to talk about and tell, why and which immunizations you should get and why. And I actually have a special guest today I was going to pop on because she has a message to share about a vaccine that she did not get. She did not find out that she should get at a advanced age, we'll say. And because of not getting that vaccine, she was in a world of pain. Anybody who knows what I'm talking about probably has already guessed. But before we get there, we're going to talk about some other things. So, again, if you're joining us from somewhere, shout out your city. I want to make sure that we recognize you. We had somebody from South Florida shout us out. We had somebody from South Carolina. So big up to the south of the country. But where are you at? Northeast? Where are you at? West Coast, Midwest? I just came from Fairfield, Iowa, so I know the Midwest is out there. So if you guys are joining in, let us know. So I'm going to share a little bit about why I was in Iowa. So I was in Iowa this past beginning of the month, and I was there for about and I'm talking about July, toward the last 2 weeks of July and into the beginning of this month. And I was there because I was attending a meditation retreat. Now, why would I be telling you all about a meditation retreat while I'm talking about immunity, right? Hey, Ohio, I see you, Ronise Handy from Ohio. Good to hear from you. I'm glad to hear that we got somebody up there in Ohio. All right, Venetia, she's here from, again, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm telling y'all, the South is representing. I see you. So yeah, I was in Iowa, Fairfield, Iowa, of all places, at a place called Maharishi International University, and I was completing a meditation training. But there was it was a sort of meditation retreat, and I was there for 3 weeks. And in that 3 weeks, I had to give up my phone, y'all. There was a little bit of anxiety at first before I gave that phone up, but in the end, I loved it. I had to give up my phone. I had to give up my laptop. I had no access to the outside world. I had 1 hour a day where I could get on my telephone or connect to family, look at social media, things like that. And after about the first week, I stopped looking at social media. But during that 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, there was a very specific diet plan that we followed. I mean, whole foods, whole grains, lots of water. I was in bed by 9:30, which I really didn't think was going to work. Before I left, I was like, I'm going to be up all night because I don't usually sleep when I'm in the city and I'm home. I don't usually go to bed till 12:30, 1 o'clock. I'm about a 4-hour sleeper. I'm up at 5, 6. I'm raring to go. Y'all, that Iowa air and not having a television in my room and not having my devices, I was in bed and sleep by 9:30, 10 o'clock. But then I was getting up about 5:30. We were walking. I got about 10 miles in a day. All of these things, all of this to say that during this 3 weeks, not only did I have the opportunity, which I always do, is I meditate twice a day. But on top of that, what happens when you actually reduce your stress and you eat right and you're drinking all the water you're supposed to drink and you're exercising consistently, there's a lot of things that happens with your body. So you're reducing the cortisol levels. Cortisol is the stress hormone that many of us are experiencing when we're in traffic and folks are honking at us and cutting us off, and that energy kind of shoots up and you kind of want to say a little something, but you don't. Some of you may say it, but I refrain. But it's still that feeling that you have, that angst. It's that fight or flight, that cortisol, and there's another hormone, adrenaline. There's adrenaline, there's cortisol, there's all these hormones that pop up that are like fight or flight. Well, cortisol is like the prolonged stress hormone, and it actually causes weight gain. It increases your blood pressure. there's a lot of poor effects. It confuses you, like you don't think as well. It actually clouds your memory and cognition. And so a lot of people don't realize that they are in a constant state bombarded with cortisol. And when you're bombarded with cortisol like that, it's actually affecting your physical health. So we want you to know, I want you to know that when we're talking about that mind, body, and stress interaction, right? That axis, that stress is not only it's hurting our minds, because I just told you the confusion, cognition, your memory is affected, and then it's affecting your body. It actually, cortisol is also responsible for shooting up your blood sugar levels. So diabetes is associated with cortisol, heart I'm sorry, hypertension and heart disease is connected to cortisol. Obesity is connected to cortisol. So cortisol has various effects, and they're all pretty negative. Now, that short, immediate fight or flight is to get you out of a situation. That's the one thing when we use it for a moment. But most times when it's prolonged, that's when you're seeing the bad effects of the diabetes, the hypertension, the obesity, the confusion, decreased cognition, decreased memory. All of these are associated with something as simple as stress. So, we wanted to just bring this fact out. And again, in this last 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks that I was gone, I came back. I've had about 5 or 6 people just walking into my office today that said, "Where have you been? You look tan, you look rested." Y'all, I didn't do anything but walk my regular walk in my 10 miles, drinking my water. My diet wasn't that different, but the stress of not being on social media, not watching television, and going to bed. I'm not even gonna play, y'all. I lost almost 20 pounds, like something like 18 pounds. Just the stress alone. I said, okay, this is ridiculous. When I get back, and I know about weight and weight loss and weight gain and things like that, but I was on my Peloton. I'm getting up, I'm doing. So I've already decided I'm back. My no is going to be real no's, right? There's going to be some things that I'm going to decide I will and won't do. But I was able to really not just shed the stress and shed all of this excess, like negative energy that was coming from the outside. I literally shed pounds in the process. So I'm telling y'all what I know. It is a real thing, and I want to make sure that y'all know my no is definitely a complete sentence. So don't take it personal in these next few months. If you ask me to do something, I may say no, but I'll say it with a smile. And I may actually point you in the direction of somebody who can help you, because I'm not the only one that could do some of the stuff that I do. So I'll be happy to share the resources. So anyway, we're going to keep going and talk about ways in which we can boost our immune system. So I just told y'all there's rest. I see you out there from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm telling y'all, Florida is representing. I love it. Thank you for joining us today. So I know Florida gets it, but that sunshine, a lot of us don't recognize that sunshine is a whole thing when it comes to our melanin. And why is that? Because it activates something called vitamin D in our skin. Many of us are vitamin D deficient, and we really don't know it. And we make assumptions that there's enough vitamins in the foods that we're eating, but there really aren't. If you're not taking a multivitamin, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you don't always eat consistently, right? We are limited sometimes, the foods that we're eating, by the regions that we live in. We're not just limited by the region, we're limited by what grows in the season, right, that you're in. So I want you eating local. I want you eating fresh fruits and vegetables. I want you to eat as much, in all the colors. If you guys are ever watching That Salad Lady, that's actually one of my faves on video. And she has moved on, but That Salad Lady would tell y'all all the time, you need to have all the colors in your diet. If you're making a salad, you need to have the reds and the greens, the blues. What are the blues and purples? Antioxidants like blueberries, purple cabbage, the red onions. You need to have the carrots, which is the orange. You need the squashes and the peppers. You need all the colors because a lot of vitamins, nutrients, and minerals come from those. But guess what? Many times we don't get enough still in our diet. So taking a multivitamin is important. And the vitamins that are really important when it comes to boosting your immune system, the number one is vitamin D. That's something that many people aren't talking about. And it's something that many Black folks are, or people of color are deficient in. And ways that it's activated in our skin is through sunlight. So you want to make sure you're getting outside. You want to make sure you're getting sunlight, but you also got to take some of those supplements like vitamin D. Another important vitamin to make sure you're taking is vitamin C. High dose vitamin C is so good for you. And it wards off things like colds and viral infections and respiratory infections. So vitamin C is very important. But another thing about vitamin C that it does is it helps the collagen and repair of skin cells, right? So it turns over cells in certain organs, like your heart, like your liver, things like that. But it also helps with turning over cells in your skin. So vitamin C is very, very important when it comes to boosting your immune system. What's another vitamin that's important? And I'm not going in any order of like the vitamin orders, but I'm going in the orders of importance. Vitamin A. Vitamin A is a huge importance when it comes to your immune system, boosting your immune system. And it really, because it does turnover of cells. Do you know that your largest organ responsible for your immune system isn't your liver, isn't your lymph nodes, it's none of those things, it's your skin? People don't realize that. Why? It's the first barrier that keeps out all of the infections. And, if you have cracks in your skin, like people who have like eczema, psoriasis, things where their skin cells, they have, the skin itself is broken, that skin barrier is broken. They actually get a lot more things like warts. If they're touching things, they'll come home with warts. They'll come home with different viral or bacterial infections that get into their skin, because the skin barrier, when it's nice and closed and healed and well, keeps out a lot of viruses, a lot of bacteria, and that's like your largest organ because it covers your entire body. So when it comes to surface area, it's the largest immune system organ. It is what it is. But then there are other immune system organs. So when I say your lymph nodes and your liver and your spleen, these are all responsible for removing certain toxins. So keeping your skin healthy, taking vitamins like vitamin C and vitamin A are really important. And so we want you to be aware of that. How do you get these things, right? Oh, zinc. I didn't talk about zinc. Zinc is also really important in your immune process. If you've ever looked at lozenges or some of the more homeopathic remedies for respiratory infections, they always have zinc, golden seal, things like that. But zinc is a very big element as well that you want to take for your immune system. Now, how do you get some of these things? We talked about foods that you can get them in, but they're not always high in the foods, or you might not eat enough of the foods. But so we want you to take supplements. But again, you can get them in some foods. You can, like carrots and squash and oranges and all the yellows and the orange things have a lot of vitamin C. What has zinc actually comes in a lot of like whole grains, things like that. Your vitamin A is also a lot of your fruits and vegetables. And then vitamin D, many times you see vitamin D is in some fruits and vegetables, but you'll often see vitamin D supplemented in foods like dairy products and things, because a lot of times it goes well with calcium. Calcium is a thing that you want to make sure you're aware of too, because calcium, hey, Nanya, I see you here from Atlanta. I'm telling you, I'm going south. I get all my love from the south. So I see you here from Atlanta, Georgia, and good to shout out Atlanta. But you need to also consider calcium, because bone health is actually really important when it comes to your immune system. So we're going to go ahead and now move a little bit forward and talk about immunizations, right? So those are natural ways to boost your immune system. What were those natural ways? We'll do a quick recap. The natural ways to boost your immune system, number one, is eating fruits and vegetables, whole grains, really a really well balanced plant based diet gives you lots of the fruits and vegetables and minerals and vitamins that you need for boosting your immune system. That's the first thing. The second thing is what we didn't, I only touched on it a little bit because I talked about my experience in Iowa, is getting enough sleep. We're often so tired and worn down that our immune systems actually break down when we're overly tired. So when you are not getting enough rest, I know you guys can attest to this. You've been just so busy, you got projects due, you got timelines, and so you keep pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing yourself. And next thing you know, you don't feel so well and you catch a cold, you catch the flu, or something happens and you're like, I hardly ever get sick, but you always get sick when you're not getting enough rest. And that's because your immune system can't hold up when you're overly tired, when you're wearing yourself down. So anytime you're overwhelmed, part of it is the stress, but it's also that you're not getting enough rest. We replenish a lot of those cells that we need for our immune system to be protected. We replenish those cells, we overturn those cells when we're resting and when we're asleep. So our body needs to be in that sleeping state to turn over their cells. And so if you don't go to sleep, you're constantly using the energy, you're not able to replenish. So that's one of the things that happens when you don't get enough sleep. Now, so we talked about the plant-based diet. We talked about getting enough sleep. The another thing is water, 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 water. One of the things that we don't think about is that our systems get toxins in the system all the time. What are some of the toxins that we get in? They might be environmental toxins, but some of the things we actually consume like willfully, right? So it might be processed foods that you're ingesting that has preservatives in it to keep them on the shelves longer, that have bright colors and which aren't natural. So then they're actually toxins to our bodies. Like, I remember growing up, a red dye number 5 and number 7 was banned off of the shelves, but it was in a lot of the foods that we were eating as a kid. And so there are toxins like food colorings, like preservatives. Y'all know there's that adult toxin that we willfully take, like alcohol, when we're drinking too much, or you got to be careful and make sure you're moderate to light, because when you get intoxicated, it's called intoxicated for a reason. Toxins are in alcohol, and it's directly affecting your liver. And your liver is that organ that is necessary to like pull out those toxins and keep your system flush. So sometimes that sludge, and that actually can affect your inability to lose weight, because that sludge gets caught up in there in your liver, and you're not able to process fat cells the way you need to. And the next thing you know, you're building that little belly around you because the liver is overtaxed, right? So and then when you're eating too much sugar, that's actually another type of toxin when we talk about it, because it's inflammatory. So excess sugar, especially processed sugars, that also inflames you, but it's taxing your pancreas. This is how people end up with insulin resistance. Your pancreas has to dump out insulin every time you eat too much sugar, or even any sugar. But the more sugar you eat, the higher your glycemic index goes, and the more insulin you need to pump out. So your pancreas gets overwhelmed. So these are things that we're willingly doing to ourselves when we're over consuming excess sugar and processed sugar, overly consuming alcohol. And we're not drinking enough water to flush the system. So drinking water flushes those toxins, flushes our system. So that there's sort of this balance that you have to create in your life. How much of these toxins you're taking in, processed foods, dyes, preservatives, sugar, alcohol, and then how much water you're drinking to flush those things out of your system. And what's a good indication that you're drinking enough water? A good indication that you're drinking enough water to flush the toxins out of your system is when your urine is clear, meaning you go to the bathroom, you go in the restroom, and you look, and it doesn't even look like you've gone, because there's no, the yellow is a part of that acid, that uric acid that you have, that you're excreting. That's a part of the toxins you're removing from your body. When you flush your body enough, because you're drinking enough water and you're not taking in so many of those toxins, then you have that clear urine. So that's what's telling you, oh, okay, yeah, I'm on the right track. I'm drinking plenty of water. What's a good gauge? Most adults, it's about a gallon a day, but that's very generic for me to say that. So it depends on what your height and weight is, depends on if you have any kidney issues. Please know, anybody with any kidney issues, you might have some fluid restrictions. So talk to your doctor about how much water you should be drinking. Because I never want to just say a gallon of water a day and then someone says, well, I heard I'm supposed to drink this much. It could be more for you because you're taller or bigger. It could be less for you. But we want to make sure that you're getting enough water and you're flushing out those toxins. So we talked about a plant-based diet. We talked about getting enough rest. Now, drinking enough water, as well as not taking in toxins that are bad for your body. And then the last one is what this show is about. It's stress. It's de-stressing. What are the things that are stressing you? Can you remove those things from your life, or can you minimize them? Can you delegate in ways? Can you just find ways to de-stress when you need to? What's one of my biggest de-stressors? Anybody who knows me could probably answer this question, but it's meditation. Twice a day, I meditate for 20 minutes a day. It's called transcendental meditation. And I'm telling y'all, it is evidence-based. It is life-saving. It lowers blood pressure. It lowers cortisol. I just came from this retreat, and I could tell you it actually lowers your cravings for junk and for food. And that's one of the reasons I'm telling you now, while I was there, this 18 pounds, I just shed it, right? So reducing stress, finding ways to reduce stress. For some people, that's a walk in nature. For some people, that's just having plants around you. Why? Because they're pumping out, you're pumping out carbon dioxide, and it's converting the carbon dioxide to oxygen. So you're getting more oxygen in. And they're just sometimes just pleasant. And whatever is peaceful for you. There's some things you got to stop doing. There's some people you may have to spend less time with. Some of the things I learned I may have to stop doing is watching as much television as I was watching, on social media as much as I've been on. And so I said, this is not a bad start, and I'm going to continue the trend so I can continue the benefits. All right. So that's a little bit of information about ways to naturally boost your immune system. So now we're going to change gears and talk about National Immunization Awareness Month. What are some of the immunizations that you should be aware of? Again, as a pediatrician and as a parent for you all, for children, there are some things that you should be aware of. Many of you know about the baby vaccines, right? So we won't go there. But what are some of the ones that as they get older, you may want to be aware of? You may want to be aware of things like the chickenpox vaccine. That's the varicella vaccine. Now, a lot of these kids have never even seen chickenpox like we did back in the day. When we were young, we got chickenpox. I got chickenpox with my brothers, but I only had like 1 or 2 marks. But back then, they put everybody in a room together so we could all get chickenpox together, because they assumed that once you got it, you were immune to it for the rest of your life. This is not true. There are various viruses that you can get that if you don't get the vaccine, you're assuming now that your immune system has been exposed to it, and now you'll never get it again. And it's not true. You can get it again. So just because a child or you have had varicella doesn't mean that you don't still need to be immunized against varicella. And sometimes as an adult, it just means checking your titers to see if you need that vaccine again. Another one is one called pneumococcal vaccine, right? So this is a pneumonia vaccine. Many people, as they get older adults need a pneumonia vaccine, but there are also some special conditions where some people have situations like sickle cell. And so their spleen doesn't work normally. It's almost like they don't have a spleen. It hasn't been removed, but it's like they don't have a spleen. So there's certain types of bacteria that could make them sick. And so a pneumococcal vaccine is very important for them. So if you're someone who has sickle cell, it's not sickle cell trait. So don't go running to doctor to say, hey, I have sickle cell trait. And Dr. Yolanda says I need a pneumococcal vaccine. This is for people who have actual sickle cell disease, the SS version of it, who most likely need it, or someone who's ever had anything happen to their spleen or had their spleen removed. And then there's also the Pneumovax for when you're older. It's a pneumonia vaccine that you would have to get. Polio is a vaccine that most of us don't think about getting. Our country, we don't see much polio. Now, I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I lived in Africa for a few years, and I saw polio firsthand. And I remember thinking, I was shocked to see polio because in America, we haven't seen it in so many years. We had a president years ago, Teddy Roosevelt, who actually had polio as a child. That's how long ago we had a polio epidemic. Once we got that vaccine widely distributed, we stopped seeing polio, but I just say that out loud. It's not completely gone. It's not eradicated like smallpox was. So just be aware that that's another vaccine that your child may have to get. Measles, mumps, and rubella. We've had measles outbreaks. You guys know this. If you're on the West Coast, there's been measles outbreaks in the last few years. I had to be a guest on NPR to talk about the measles outbreaks a few years ago. And so some of these things, because parents choose to sometimes not vaccinate, but because there's herd immunity, because we vaccinate most of the kids, you still see these breakthrough epidemics. Sometimes it's because we have people who may immigrate from certain areas where that virus is still endemic. And so we just have to be careful. But measles, mumps, and rubella is another vaccine you need to know about. Hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is this vaccine that we give to young kids, babies, right? And when they come, when we give it to them, we're not concerned that they're actually going to be affected by hepatitis unless it's through the birth canal. But it's a very easy vaccine to, and it's highly effective. So we give it at a young age. We also suggest when you become an adult that you actually find out whether you're immune enough. So you might have to get your titers taken. And so often as an adult, you have to go to a second hepatitis series, but not too often. Now, if you're somebody who does tattoos and things like that, and you're using, you're going to tattoo parlors with needles, you definitely want to get your hepatitis B and hepatitis A vaccines. Hepatitis A is a little different. That's definitely more likely to be sexually transmitted, but hepatitis B is a lot of times it's transmitted through needles, shared needle usage. And as we just put up on the screen, it causes, what is hepatitis? It causes inflammation of the liver. Your liver system is your hepatic system, right? So that's another word for hepatic is your liver. So hepatitis is inflammation of the liver. What are some of the things that happens with hepatitis? A person gets what we call jaundice, their skin turns yellow. Now, what happens is if you're of darker skin, you may not see that yellowing. Where do we see the yellowing on someone who has darker skin, darker hue, more melanin? We'll see it in their eyes. So the whites of their eyes can get really yellow. And when I say yellow, it's not just like a little yellow. It's like yellow, like neon yellow. So every time you see someone whose eyes are getting yellow, or your eyes, or someone that's that you care about, make sure they get checked out to see if they have hepatitis or if something's going on with their liver. Many of you already know about the flu. We get this annually. The flu shot is not something we usually argue about. Prior to COVID coming, we were used to these annual vaccines. As a healthcare worker, I have to get the flu shot every single year for my protection. And the reason you get it every year is because there are mutations that happen. And so you're not going to be protected for that next year if you don't get the new flu shot. This is likely where we're headed with COVID. COVID vaccines, often the newer ones have more protection for the last few mutations. I don't know that we're going to a full on every year change in the vaccine, but it's not going to be uncommon if you see that there's a new COVID vaccine like every couple of years or so, if we continue to see these mutations. But see, those are the big ones. So the last two I wanted to know, last three. So tetanus boosters. Tetanus boosters is something that if you haven't had a Tdap or a tetanus booster, this happens every 10 years. Sometimes every 7 to 10 years. And it keeps you from getting what we call lock job. You step on like a rusty nail or cut yourself. You're out working in the yard or something, and you cut yourself. They'll often ask you, "Did you see any rust on the nail?" If you're working on a car and you cut yourself, they'll ask you, "Did you see any rust?" And sometimes just to protect yourself, they'll go ahead and give you a tetanus shot so that you don't get what we call lock jaw from tetanus. Now, the one before I talk about the big one is meningitis. Meningitis. This is a very important vaccine to talk about. My daughter is going off to college. If you have a teenager, we generally give a meningitis shot at 11. We give another meningitis shot at, except there's two more to talk about. Meningitis, we give it 11. We give another one at 16, and then we give it as you're leaving for college. And there's two meningitis shots. There's a meningitis A and a meningitis B. Meningitis is it's an infection, viral infection. It affects the brain, but it affects the brain covering, which means it also affects the nerves, and it can then affect any of your extremities. I had a classmate, Dr. William Dash, and I'd love to have him on the show at some time to help to come talk about this. But he actually had both legs amputated from the knee, above the knee, because while we were in medical school, he got meningitis. Just felt like a cold. He was finishing his exams. This was like our winter break was about to start. We'd all just had exams. He went home for that Christmas break, and he wasn't feeling well, had chills, got up to go to the bathroom, thought he just had like the flu or something, and he collapsed on the floor. Parents heard the noise, come upstairs. He's, sweating profusely. They don't know what's going on. They rush him to the hospital, and he had meningitis. So they had to treat him, get everything taken care of. But by the time they did, both legs were amputated above the knee. Now, you've probably seen the meningitis B commercial where you have a young boy. He's, working out, and he has I think prosthetics on his legs. You have a young girl who has a hearing aid. It's a real thing. This is not something to be played with. So meningitis is something you've got to be aware of. So if you're sending your child off to college, or if they're of age to go to the military, meningitis is something that you want to make sure they're vaccinated against. And there's two types, meningitis A and meningitis B. Then there's HPV, human papillomavirus. I'm a huge advocate, and I want to talk about that quickly because many times people think you should only vaccinate girls from meningitis from hepatitis, from HPV, human papillomavirus, because it can, you can detect it on pap smears. They get cervical cancer, vaginal cancer. But guess what? Boys can get HPV too. There is penile cancer, there's anal cancer, there's oral cancer. I actually was a guest on, I think it was NBC a couple months ago, because there was an outbreak of oral cancer that was connected to HPV. And so we have to be aware that HPV is this thing that we do want to vaccinate our children against, not because we just assume they're sexually active at between 9 and 11. That's just when we start to give the vaccine. We start to give the vaccine at that time because they're actually more susceptible to being able to incorporate the vaccine into their cells, and it's more effective at that age. So that's HPV. It's cancer causing. It's one of the only vaccines that actually saves lives from cancer. So please be aware of the benefits of getting your HPV vaccine. So now, the reason this show was very important to me to have today is to talk about something that, again, it's kind of like a rebrand of a virus, if you will. So if you've ever had chicken pox, if you've had chicken pox, that means that the varicella virus is latent in your cells, and you may never see chicken pox again. That would be great. But guess what? After 50, it's very likely that chickenpox can rear its ugly head again, but we don't call it chickenpox when you're over 50. When you get chickenpox that second time, when it when it reinvents itself and resurfaces, it's actually called shingles. Shingles is something that if you don't get vaccinated again after 50 against this varicella with something called Shingrix, then you're very likely to get shingles. And when I tell you, you don't want shingles, please believe me, you don't want shingles. So I have a guest who has come on the show. She made it very clear she was not coming on screen because she is just now overcoming shingles, or she's actually still in the thick of it. But she posted about it, and I reached out to her and I said, "Would you please be on my show? And are you willing to talk about it? Because it's something that a lot of people have either dismissed, or because they don't have a regular doctor, they just weren't aware that they should get this shot. And if you can be saved from this type of pain, I promise you, you want to be. So I'm going to invite into the studio a very good dear friend of mine, happens to be one of my lovely, and she's beautiful, y'all. She just won't be on the screen today. My sorority sister, this is Jenye Fletcher. Come on in. Oh, you did get on screen. See,
I
she did.
did.
I
I
am
did.
going to do it. So, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Um,
Thank
so
you.
tell us a little bit about it. Yes, so she posted this and she was like, look, I thought I had a high tolerance for pain, but shingles. She's like, why didn't anybody tell me? And what can I do? And I reached right out and said, here are some things to boost your immune system. I kind of told her some of the stuff I had shared with y'all about how to boost your immune system. But then the other thing is just pain control. And I was like, would you be willing to come in here and talk about shingles and whether or not you would recommend that vaccine and all the stuff? So, how are you feeling today?
So today is the first day I have felt decent. And I will be honest, the last 48 hours, I literally cried myself to sleep. I would not wish that pain on anyone. And it snuck up on me. I had heard about shingles, but to be honest, I didn't know there was a vaccine. I just turned 51 last month. So it wasn't in my purview. I haven't even had my annual checkup this year yet. So I'm sure had I had it, then my doctor would have recommended that I got the vaccine. Um, and so probably on like Friday, I started feeling some pressure in my back, like right where my trapezoids are. And I just kept feeling like, why are my muscles so sore? And just for some context, I had my family reunion this weekend. So I have been on my feet, stressed out, like 12 hours a day, cooking, baking, decorating, because I hosted the reunion here. And so
Mhm.
Friday, when I started feeling that pressure and that pain in my back, I thought, oh, this is just anxiety, stress, you know. And then Monday, I started feeling it on the front side in my chest. And so when I would take a deep breath, it would hurt almost like a muscle cramp. I could feel the sharpness when I would inhale and exhale. And so I started to get a little worried. So I called and made an appointment with my doctor and said, hey, these are my symptoms. Can I come in? And they said, yeah, well, you can come tomorrow at 1. An hour later, I went to the bathroom and I was wearing a jumpsuit. When I pulled the jumpsuit down over my shoulder, it felt like somebody just took a whip across my back. And I
Mm,
picked up a mirror so that I could do just like a reflection from mirror to mirror. And I saw what I thought was hives developing on my
mhm,
back. And so I was like,
mhm,
okay, maybe these things are connected, maybe not. I'm going to go to urgent care just because I don't want to wait and something happen overnight and I'm stuck going to the emergency room. Went to
mhm,
urgent care. They were so focused on like the trouble breathing I was having that they didn't look at the what I thought was hives. So they took x-rays, EKG, all of that. And so she was like, well, I'm going to confer with another doctor. While I do that, let me take a look at the hives that you have. And when I pulled down my shirt, she said, oh, that's not hives, that's shingles. And the pain that you're feeling when you breathe, that's the reaction from your nervous system. It's inflamed, all of it's connected. So the good news was
Mm.
there was nothing wrong with my heart. But the bad news was I had shingles. So again, that was urgent care. They gave me, now I'm not good with names. They gave me some Vacyclovir. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, the cyclovir. And
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
for the zoster, right? To
Okay.
to
Okay.
shorten the life, to shorten the course. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. And some ibuprofen for the pain. And when I tell you that ibuprofen did nothing, it did not a thing. It was
I
like,
hate to laugh. I'm just listening, like I already know. So I'm listening to people like, this is not, you do not want shingles. You just don't want it.
mm-mm,
But I
mm-mm.
understand because it's the type of pain, it's in the nerve root. And so it's very difficult. What most people consider pain, it's like muscle pain. So you can kind of manage it, but in the nerve, ooh, there's nothing like nerve pain.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
This is like the first day that I have been able to let a shirt touch my skin. That's how bad
wow.
it was. Yeah. So I did follow up with my primary care physician, and he was able to prescribe something else to help manage the pain.
Mhm.
And it worked. Last night I did get a decent night's sleep. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than it has been. So now I am just really trying to like manage my stress. Um, which, for Black women, especially, I'm a single mom, so all of
Yeah,
that, um,
yes. We
and
do
just
all the
try to get some rest.
things. We're the cook. And I remember, so she also said to me, y'all, she was like, chickenpox shots. And I was like, I'm sure they have. Everybody's gotten varicella if they've gotten their vaccines. But she was serious. She was like, obviously, she had been informed. And so you all need to know that too. If you get shingles, and you have young kids around you who aren't immunized, be careful. Make sure that they get immunized, especially against varicella, because it can rear itself again. And that's the next conversation. The next question is, when you talk to your primary care, did they suggest that after you recover from this, that you get the vaccine?
Already made my 3-month appointment, so I will go back in December to have the vaccine. So I usually don't play around with stuff like that, but I was unaware. I knew about shingles, but I didn't know there was a vaccine for it.
Yes, yes. And the reason I make sure I made that point is because many people think, well, if I got it already, then I don't need the vaccine. And I'm like, oh no. There are people who have had shingles, made that same decision because they're like, well, now I have immunity. And then they get it again. And they're like, wait, what happened? And I'm like, your body's your body's response to it is very good. Don't get me wrong. And we mount up in antibodies and we do the things, but it's not the same as when you get that vaccine against it. That protection is much more pronounced, and it's just wider protection. So if you can get the vaccine, even if you've had the virus, you want to go ahead and get the vaccine. And like you said, it's 3 months later. You got to wait a few months and then get that vaccine. So I'm so glad you were able to join us, because you said I could not be on screen. It is so good to see your beautiful smile, and
Well,
that
when
you're
I think
feeling
I
better.
shared with you, yeah, I think I shared with you a post that one of my line sisters, she made her appointment that day and went and got her vaccine. So I was like, if me sharing my story will encourage somebody else to do it, I would be more than happy to throw
And
some
that's
lip gloss on
exactly why
and get on
he said
screen.
throw some lip gloss on. But that's why I got you on, because I really wanted people to see this is like real stuff. Like, I'm reading these papers. Yeah, get this vaccine, get that. And people, sometimes can go, all right, here they go pushing vaccines have been, I heard it's such pain that I did not want to have. So I believed the person who told me, and I said, okay, let me go ahead and get my get. So any parting words for us? I just appreciate you being here and sharing this story, because again, this is National Immunization Awareness Month, and so I wanted to just bring out just information about, number one, how we can naturally boost our immune systems, but number two, what are those vaccines we should be aware of? Because as a parent, most of us still think about vaccines for our kids, and we're just vaccines that we might still find fabulous, but shingles ain't cute. So, so we want to make sure they're getting this, we're getting the shingles vaccine. All right. So, any parting words for us? And
just take it seriously. Just take it seriously. You're breaking up a little bit. Are we still connected?
Yeah, we seem to be having, we lost Dr. Yolanda. Are you back?
Have a seat.
Start chopping up.
Yeah, we're here. We're here. I was like, Ellis, can you hear me? Yeah, it's all right. Jenye, where are you joining in from? Where do you
I'm in Brandywine, Maryland.
Tell the audience. And all right, y'all had a good run. We in 6 minutes. So I want to thank you for joining us today. And Ellis, if you can pop up the plan for keep, if you don't have it, I can pop it up.
I got you.
I have my so I have put together, most of y'all was sharing my Plan for Keeps card. And my Plan for Keeps card for today is the 8 of Diamonds. And the card says, take a trip to connect with nature. We've been talking about ways to distress. We've been talking about ways to boost your immune system. And a lot of that has to do with how we relax. And for many of us, connecting with nature is a way to relax. So if you can take a trip to connect with nature this week, please do so. Week. Through compassion, forgiveness, kindness, love, overall concern, all life forms become spiritual beings. Stressed or anxious to more calm and balanced. Similarly, studies by Ulrich, Kim, and Cervinka show that time in nature or scenes of nature, just scenes of nature, sometimes just sounds of nature. If you've ever listened to waterfalls, and a lot of times meditation music is set to a waterfall, just water, a fountain of meaningfulness and vitality. So this week, I want y'all to take a trip. It could be a walk in the park. I'm near Rock Creek Park. It's always one of my favorite walks. Sometimes I go down to Old Alexandria and walk through those parks, but just listening to the rustling of the leaves, listening to the water, and just spending time in nature, grass beneath their feet. These are ways that you can actually positively impact your mood and de-stress and just, feel better. So I want you guys to consider that this anytime this until next Friday. And if it takes you a couple weeks of joining me today, is Mind, Body, and Stress with Dr. Yolanda. And we'll see you all month in September. Issues. We're going to have a guest who's going to join us